Senator, thank you for being with us. You know, it's been like a week and a half that he's not even mentioned Afghanistan. Then you got all these other crises that I'm mentioning. You see what's going on down at the border. You see what's happening with the economy. You see what's happening with COVID. Now we're begging OPEC to produce more oil. Senator, I don't think in my lifetime a presidency could be this bad this quickly, but it's happening before our eyes.
Yeah, Joe Biden was elected on the promise that he was going to return normalcy, competency to the American government. That's what he argued and said, as if there was an absence of it. And what you've seen now is a cascade of calamities and disasters, and they were all created by him and by actions he took. You can't go around for months sort of arguing that there's not going to be any border security and creating the perception and the reality that people can enter the country and they're going to get to stay and not expect for thousands of people to come. And what we're witnessing now, look, it's heartbreaking to see. It's also unsustainable, and it's 100% caused by everything they've said and done up to this point that's led to this. And by the way, where's the vice president who's supposed to be in charge of the border response? I think right now she seems to be in the witness protection program because she's nowhere to be seen on that. And I could go on. I mean, we could spend an hour here talking about the cascade of calamities and disasters that have all been brought about by this administration, their incompetence, and the wrong decisions that they've made.
Let me ask you, Senator, we've got the Pentagon now admitting drone strikes killing humanitarians and children. We got an FDA panel rejecting Joe's booster shots that he said we all needed. France recalling their ambassador. Milley under fire, as you rightly say. You know, I agree with you. At a minimum, he should be put on administrative leave until we find out whether or not what is reported by Woodward and Costa is true. Then we've got, Blinken now totally out to lunch, lecturing the Taliban on inclusivity. They shut down the Women's Affairs Office today. The border crisis exploding, COVID crisis exploding, and they want to spend $3.5 trillion on the new Green Deal, Senator. Which one would you like to take first? Because that's a pretty long list.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, look, the one about it, not just Americans, but American permanent residents, green card holders that are literally in hiding. The Associated Press today wrote about it, documented how these people live in darkness, hiding, jumping from place to place every night so the Taliban doesn't hunt them down. And we know that that is an ongoing situation there. And then, of course, we talked about the border. The situation with General Milley, they didn't create it, but they've got to address it. You can't have the highest ranking military official in this government bragging to a reporter about how they stepped in and superseded the authority of an elected commander-in-chief and actually undermined him by talking to a potential adversary. I mean, I just don't. And one more thing about the FDA and the booster shot. This was all produced out of the White House. They wanted to show, remember, these were the guys that were saying, I'm not going to politicize COVID. We're not going to politicize the vaccine and the science. Those pronouncements out of the White House about an additional booster shot was a political statement. And the scientists at the FDA, I believe the vote was 16-2, rejected it for anyone other than those over a certain age. So on issue after issue, it's a broken promise and incompetence, and the country, it's not even ideological anymore. It's incompetence and a lack of leadership. And the country is beginning to pay a tremendous price for it.
You know, it's scary. As you look at the border, Senator, I think in light of the pandemic, we ought to have health checks, certainly a testing. Certainly, if we're going to have vaccine mandates, that ought to be part of it. Also, national security backgrounds, because who knows who's going to try and infiltrate whatever population is there that might have bad intentions for every American. We're not doing any of these things. We're going to set a 25-year record, probably at a minimum by the end of the year, of illegal immigrants, and they won't even recognize it as a crisis. If you won't acknowledge the problem, how do you ever solve that problem?
Well, first they won't acknowledge it because they created it. I mean, and the interviews, and as people have talked to some of these people that are down that have come over, they're all surprised and angry. They said, we were told that if we came with a child, we could stay. We weren't even, others have said they didn't even give us a deportation letter. They knew some of the legal steps that had to be taken. Others have been lied to and told the border's wide open, just come on in. It's legal now to enter the United States. Some of them spent thousands of dollars to make that journey. All of it created by the perception, by the words, by the actions of Joe Biden when he was a candidate, and then when he took took over as president. And one more interesting point, there are multiple countries around the world that you can't come to the United States from some parts of Europe and other parts of the world legally. You can't buy a plane ticket and fly here with a visa because of COVID restrictions. But we are basically allowing thousands of people to enter the country illegally, no vaccine, as you said, no checks whatsoever. And it's just one more absurdity of it. And it would be, frankly, I mean, it sounds almost so crazy that you can't believe it's true, but it's happening, and it's happening all at once. And that's what happens when incompetent people get a hold of the government.
And Milley just gets pushed under, pushed aside. The Americans abandoned in Afghanistan, we're just going to forget about them and not talk about them, or not try and get them home? Because that's what's happening.
Talk about that. It is what's happening. I'm glad your show and others are not letting that happen. But they want to move on. They don't want to talk about bad news. I mean, like I said, I don't know where to begin or end an interview like this, because we could go on all day about one thing after the other, and more to come. I think more to come. I mean, we're going to have a COVID surge in other states outside of the South as we get into the winter and fall, and they're restricting access to these antibody treatments that have been phenomenal. And in Florida, they've kept thousands of people out of the hospital, including vaccinated people.
Oh, now they're rationing that, and meanwhile you fought for it. Governor DeSantis fought for it and built centers all around the state. These are rough times.